What's going on there, folks? Good evening. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Friday night. It is September 8th, 2023, about 9:10 p.m. here, California time in the West Coast. And man, have we had a lot of earthquake activity in the past 24 hours. That is a little understatement there. The latest earthquake shows a 4.1 off the coast of Costa Rica, it looks like, down here. Now, I did add the EMSC model back onto the globe to keep track of some worldwide earthquake activity. EMSC was the first agency out here to report that large earthquake in the Morocco area, so I think it's beneficial here to include them. It's kind of odd, though, because over the past couple months or so, it's weird. It's been some large earthquake activity out here that was really not legit. They would pop it up here on the globe, but there was actually no earthquake. And I just find it really odd here now that we do have a large earthquake out here within that zone that they were. Well, it's a little south of the zone that they had claimed. There had been some big earthquakes in the past. So either way, it was putting out some false earthquakes. Either way, we have a large earthquake out there in Morocco today. Goodness, that was quite a large earthquake for this area. It is away from the plate boundary, so I was kind of hesitant when I did the update video earlier on this. I was kind of hesitant on if this was a legit earthquake or not, and I was waiting for the P waves to pop up around the globe, and eventually they did during the update. That marked the legit seismic signature that I look for when it comes to large earthquakes around the globe. So, a lot of times the EMSC put some false info out here. This time was not the case. 6.8 in Morocco. Pager system way up in the red. Now, looks like there's a potential out there for some heavy-duty estimated economic losses, as well as the potential fatalities in the orange here. So this is quite a shaker. Historical data, and the USGS is kind of agreeing with me on this one. It's away from the plate boundary, and we just don't normally see that type of large-scale movement in this area. It occurred, I'm not going to read all the scientific data on it here, but they mentioned here in the bottom, earthquakes of this size in the region are uncommon, but not unexpected. But since 1900, there have been no earthquakes of M6 and larger within 500 kilometers of this earthquake. So, but not unexpected. So did they know something was going to pop up? There was only 9 M5s and larger earthquakes within this area. I pulled up the map myself. Well, I thought I did. I had a few other windows open here, but yeah, there's really not a whole lot of historical data out here with regards to the large-scale movement. These are only, I guess we can use this map to work for the Morocco area, 4.5 and above, and you can see there's just not a lot out there historically since about 1900 to 2015. Of course, there's mountain ranges out here, right? They had to form somehow due to the plate stress. Just happens to be today when it decided to pop off a large earthquake in this area. Now, I haven't heard too much on the potential damage out there, but again, the pager system is out there in the now it says the orange. Wasn't that up there in the red just a second ago? Let me double check. There we go. That's a little weird. So yeah, definitely, a serious situation out there around Morocco. The population density, I'm not for sure what it is. Obviously, it looks like there's some mountains out here around the epicenter itself, with communities nearby, as you can see listed up here. Goodness. Did you feel it report? Some of them coming in. A lot of this around the epicenter and around this community right here. Is that Marrakesh, it looks like? Reporting some very strong to potentially severe shaking from this. Even somebody up here in the red, it looks like, reported some extreme shaking with one response there within about 29 kilometers of this epicenter. But mostly, either way, with it being an earthquake of that magnitude and also just a very shallow depth there of about 18 kilometers below the surface. That will definitely make for some large shaking out there in the area. So hopefully this is the last of it. There hasn't been any record as far as 6.0 and above. They mentioned that here. No earthquakes within 500 kilometers of this quake today. So I don't think the likelihood of a larger quake is imminent. I don't believe that. There is definitely some aftershock activity. USGS showing a 4.9. Obviously, there's quite a bit more. The USGS including a bunch more, including what looks like a 5.7 in there, in that mix. And so that's why I'm going to leave the EMSC data up here on the globe for now, because they cover the extreme aftershock activity following these large-scale events. We'll just have to figure out a way to ignore some of the false quakes. Now, this may be one up here. I don't know, 5.0. But the general, I'm going to check this here in just a second, but the general plate stress movement out here amongst the area does show that strain up here, the general plate movement here, notice the arrows putting strain up on this region, could affect the Mediterranean here soon, far as larger scale movement goes. Now, I'm not 100% certain if this 5.0 is a legit earthquake. That's why I'm going to check it. But if it is, then we know that movement is definitely taking place there following that activity in Morocco today. Let me go over here to the worldwide, or the world map. What are they reporting? They're reporting a 5.0 at local time here, 6:46 p.m. Could it be this one? 6:46 p.m. See, it almost looks like one of these here is going to be one of these smaller quakes. So I think that may be an error listed by the EMSC on that on that globe, because I'm not seeing it here on the map. Right? Here's the all the large scale movement here. It looks like this is up around the Spain area, potentially around here. So it doesn't look like there's any 5-pointer showing up. So that's what we have to be careful about with the EMSC data on the globe. Sometimes they pop up false earthquakes, and they stay up there for a little while. There's definitely been a lot of earthquake activity. I don't even know where to begin. Here in Northern California, we had a 5.0 here in a very odd region of Northern California. I'm going to save that here for last. We're going to take a look at this very active map. But just keep an eye here on the Mediterranean region for some potential movement. Again, with that general plate stress out here pointing towards the northeast, that could spell a little bit of trouble here in the coming days. Right now, again, aside from that, I'm going to call it probably a phantom earthquake here, the 5.0. Things are generally light across this area as far as some threes and some smaller quakes in the area go. But we'll continue to watch that. All right. The other large-scale movement here was earlier this morning, much earlier this morning, 6.6 down in the Kermadec Islands area. Looks like we have seen a little bit of adjustment upstream. Notice that deeper activity, 89 kilometers deep. And then that adds further strain up here across the subduction zone itself. That's where we've seen some shallower earthquake activity hours later. But this just goes to tell me that this is building up quite a bit of strain. We already know this area is, I think, a little bit overdue here in New Zealand, I believe. Looking at the lack of activity out here, I would say that it's coming, depending on what takes place here in the coming days. You never know. It's best to be prepared out there. This Kermadec Islands area, Kermadec Trench, did have an 8.1 back in, it was that year of the 8s. We had one here, one down in the South Sandwich Trench, and then one up in Alaska, if I remember right. We had like 3 8-pointers. So I don't think we're going to be looking at an 8-pointer here, but that's a long trench, a long subduction zone, and the accumulated slip rate is not that low. We're looking at anywhere from 240 all the way down south here to 80 mm per year. That's actually quite high for any region out there. So it doesn't take a whole lot of time for stress to build up along the major subduction zones out there. Now, the latest activity, of course, is this shallow one here. Seeing a little bit of movement bounce back and forth here between the deeper quakes and shallower adjustment up here across Vanuatu and the Port Vila area. A little bit of deeper movement quakes here. Goodness, that's almost 700 kilometers deep. Look at that. 660 kilometers deep under this thing, under this this plate here. But down into the portion, this is going to be the Kermadec Trench here. Kermadec Trench for that 4.9 earlier this morning. So a lot going on here. It doesn't look like we've seen that westward migration here along the plate boundary, but you know, there's a lot going on here across the Pacific plate. I don't know, I don't need to say it too many times, but it's pointing out to something big happening out here, I think. Also a swarm of activity here close to the East China Sea. Now, this is rather interesting as well, because this region can see some large earthquakes out here. And this is a swarm, something like what you would see prior to maybe something big happening. A lot of 4s and a bunch of 5s in there as well, clustered into a little swarm fashion here. Not too deep. Looks like anywhere between 5 to 22 to 53 kilometers deep here. Again, Japan region. This is the northwestern edge here of the Filipino plate. That is right over here in the red, kind of a darker orange. Now, whatever goes on here along the western Pacific plate with that adjustment and movement will affect the Filipino plate and this whole general area. Right along the Japan area southward towards Taiwan. This is reinforced by the Eurasia plate headed directly at it, and then reinforced here from the Filipino plate and the Pacific plate. See where all these arrows are pointing? Major hazardous area in terms of large-scale movement. Some of these are estimates here, 60 to 100 mm per year. I'm sure certain areas are greater across that region. But keep an eye on this area with the swarming taking place. I did see some activity up here into the Japan Trench, 53 kilometers deep just off the east coast here of Japan for that 5.5. Kermadec Trench, look at that, still is the ultimate sleeping beast, so to speak. This thing is massive. It's got one of the higher accumulated slip rates out there, 83 mm per year, and that has not had a mega quake in a little while. Missy Mimi's was just pointing this out when we're looking at this update, or this map here a little bit ago, that we've been seeing kind of a bounce back and forth here. A lot of times we'll talk about that teeter-totter effect, where one side of the Pacific plate's very active while this area remains quiet, but that has not been the case. Both areas are very active, and the last time that happened, we've seen an 8-pointer up here in the north, kind of like the middle point, so to speak. Not for sure if we're going to see an 8-pointer up here or not, but we'll definitely keep an eye on some of these quiet zones while these forces battle themselves out here across the plate boundaries. Definitely keep an eye on some of these quiet zones here. Kurokamachaka, big time. Super deep earthquake here into the Java Sea area, 5.6. Now, that type of activity way down there can definitely build up strain around the Java Trench, and that's another major subduction zone. These subduction zones are no joke. Roughly between 60 to 70 mm per year on average, some maybe a little bit higher. And of course, we can see some large mega quakes out here. Let me look at the activity out here over the last 7 days. Not a whole lot through here. A couple smaller quakes in the 4 range. Some of that deep in here as well. Looks like that deeper movement was up here with lack of surface activity. So strain definitely building up in this region due to these 2 earthquakes way down there, 500 kilometers deep. But overall, the seismic activity here over the last week has been pretty quiet across the Java Trench, with only a handful of surface quakes. So we'll watch that area potentially for some movement as well. Right now, we see where the hot spots are, and sometimes these swarms can point towards something bigger potentially building in this area. But also at the same time, it could be just, building upstream up towards the surface areas of the subduction zones. But it's hard to say with this area. This is pretty shallow. But we'll continue to watch these areas, quiet zones, and regions that are seeing some swarms, which is like pretty much all over right now. India 4.8, about 33 kilometers deep, well northeast of India. This is way up here, north of the Himalayas, outside the Himalayas. Let's see if we got anything in the Indian Ocean. Not a whole lot going on there. Some divergent boundary out here. Divergent activity here around the Gulf of Aden with a 4.4 separation of the sea for some fraction zones, fracture zones. There we go out here in the West Sheba Ridge area. This is a divergent boundary. Let's see, a little bit of activity out here in this divergent boundary as well. That was a 5.0 earlier this afternoon in the southern mid-Atlantic ridge. Let me check New Zealand here real quick. I don't want to go past that and see what's going on down there in New Zealand. Still only showing that 3.3 from yesterday. I was at 4.5. When was that? Let me see here. September 8th. That's New Zealand time, but I think they're well ahead of that now, so that's a little old. Looking at there's some activity outside of the Kermadec Trench. 4.3 Kermadec Trench. I'm just seeing a lot of mostly smaller microquakes out there. I'm not going to go through every single event out there, but let's just double check and see what we got. That is a beauty of a signature. That's going to be that large earthquake. 6.6, right? Kermadec Islands area early this morning. That's quite a beauty. Definitely a beautiful seismograph signature, and I still think there was almost 2 earthquakes involved in there. If you look at some of these stations that are farther away, like for example Milford Sound, a couple of these other stations, they're all showing 2 seismic signatures. You guys see that? Not just one, that would be one, but I see bam bam right there. So I find that a little odd. A lot of these are showing that double signature as well. So unless I'm reading these wrong, but it sure looks like a double earthquake. We'll check the Yellowstone seismographs here in a little bit. See if we can spot that seismic signature of a double earthquake in there as well. Let's see here. Hawaii, kind of out in the middle of it all, right? In between the Pacific, it's on the Pacific plate. I'm sure what goes on underneath Hawaii will affect the volcanoes. We're not really seeing any major swarm activity though kicking up. This is all just general earthquake activity. Let me give a quick glance here at the hazard notification system from the HVO. The daily update put out today. It is not erupting, and no unusual activity has been noted across the rift zones. No notable swarms in the past day, so things are just kind of tapering off for now, but we'll expect that, I'm sure, to kick back up. A little bit of activity out here. This is a pretty new earthquake that just came in the last hour and a half, 5.3. Divergent boundary. A lot of activity stirring up below the surface, increasing some of these divergent zones. A lot going on right now, I think. Some major change. It seems like we always get, an increase in earthquake activity as we head towards fall and the winter months. That could have something to do with the tilt, right? As we head back, I think we kind of tilt back to the north as far as the states go. But always seems to kick up around this time of year for some reason. And I'm sure that has something to do with, everything that's going on here. Okay, Puerto Rico, not a whole lot going on. A couple smaller earthquakes. Off the coast of Mexico, they did have a 5.8 earthquake here. And it's about 53 kilometers deep. Some shallow earthquake activity down south, more recent. But I think that's just an overall trend right now of seismic elevated activity across the eastern Pacific here, the eastern part of the plate, and these adjacent plates. In this case, it's going to be the Cocos Plate, Nazca Plate down here up against the South America Trench. or the Peru Chile Trench. There we go. And there's some smaller quake activity stirring up down there. You can see that in the earthquake 3D globe. That's going to be the EMSC model reporting that. And it is kind of beneficial to see some of this earthquake activity on the smaller scale. So we just have to take note of some of these earthquakes that may pop up here around Spain or Morocco. That's why I really thought this may have been a a phantom earthquake, but reports started to come in, seen the seismic wave, and things got real. What, we've got 3.1 down in New Zealand right now. Start talking about New Zealand, and look what happens. Goodness. That's the latest one. South Island looks like that is right on the plate boundary there. Looks like just off the well, it's on the Alpine Fault there. Looks like. Keep an eye on this area, right? All this movement going on, and New Zealand's just sitting there nice and quiet. Good to be prepared, folks, down there. All right, let's see. Checking out the states here. Small amount of activity scattered out and about here. Not really seeing anything major as far as the eastern portion of the country goes for 2.5 and above. Just some smaller microquakes out in this area. Yellowstone National Park, super volcano up there. I do want to double check that and see what we have. If it's working, maybe it is. There it is. All right, so all right. So far as seismic activity goes, goodness, look at that. What is that? Was there any storms up there? I'm just going to double check because those kind of look like wind events. I'm just going to double check because I don't want to say that's anything other than weather. It only takes a second to check that. So let me go over here to the windy map and check out, see what we had up there in Yellowstone over the past, it looks like the past 3 hours or so. We're just going to pull the past 6 hours up and see what we got here. Look around here, folks. Tell me if you see any storms, lightning popping up here in the last 6 hours. That would explain that seismic signature that pops up for a couple hours, it seems like, in the late afternoon or so. Oh yeah, quite a few storms popping up around this area. A lot of times, folks, the wind, thunderstorms, hail, the rumble of the thunder does trigger that type of event out there. It looks like maybe in the mix, though, was that last larger earthquake right there. Now, 4 or 5, 6 hours ago, right? Which, of course, that showed up there. That showed up pretty nicely. That seismic wave, even in Yellowstone National Park, thousands of miles away. That's going to be the start of a P wave right here. Then the S waves, these surface waves, are the wavy lines. And I'm sure you guys seen them on the live seismograph stations if you were watching there. Which they've calmed down right now. But those are the S waves from the big earthquake there in Morocco. And then earlier in the Kermadec Trench, I believe that's the Kermadec Trench. That may have been that 5.8 down in Mexico, but it's hard to say. There's been a lot of activity today. Goodness. And there's what looks like maybe some earthquake activity. Let's see here. That kind of showed up at roughly about the same time as the wind and stuff did. It's really hard to say because that didn't show up across too many other seismograph stations, so it's uncertain on if that's earthquake activity or not. Let me go back here to the USGS map and see what they have reported, if anything. 2.4 down in south of Yellowstone early this morning, but nothing here for the afternoon or evening. So it doesn't look like there was too much activity. Just thunderstorms, man. When they blow over, they definitely add some noise onto the seismograph stations. All right, we got a couple volcanoes in Washington popping off. Not volcanic activity, I don't think yet. You never know. We've been pretty lucky here with volcanoes, right? Living our daily lives here, and just everything's just hunky-dory. Don't have to worry about a volcano blowing, or no major earthquakes have happened. It's just a matter of time. Can't be quiet forever. Mount Rainier seen a little bit of activity right smack dab at the crater area today. Some of the activity from late last night. Looking at about 7 earthquakes. We're going to check out that seismograph station here in a second. Mount St. Helens as well. A couple earthquakes. We've been watching this. This has been a swarm of activity around Mount St. Helens over the last 30 days. We're talking about 126 earthquakes of various magnitudes. Nothing large. The largest one was a 2.4, right smack dab at the cone area, or the this crater area up there. And that's that's quite an earthquake swarm. So let's go ahead and check out the before we get into Northern California here, because I want to talk about that fault system. But I do want to look at the volcano hazards map up here, and we'll take a look at these real quick. Tremor map, right? Because tremor does have an effect on what goes on with the volcanoes and earthquake activity. We're seeing 83 tremors at Northern California. Roughly about the same time we see some crustal earthquake activity over here around Bernie. I bet we're under quite a bit of strain out here, and that could spell a little bit of trouble across this area of the plate boundary, Eureka area, the Triple Point Junction. Watch that, because when we get a little slippage going on, I call it slippage because these are slow slip events going on below the surface. In the Cascadia subduction zone. The subduction zone itself sits offshore, but that whole plate is being subducted underneath the North American plate here, the Juan de Fuca plate. And that creates slow vibrational frequencies. I believe that obviously adds strain up to the locked area of the Cascadia, which sits from Northern California all the way up to the Queen Charlotte Sound area. Major hazard area. 1,700. I think my earthquake rock was swinging. But then again, I do have the AC on in here, so it could be the fan. I don't know. But with this type of activity, I'll talk about the earthquake rock here in a minute too. People wanting to know about it. But with this activity, I think we're looking at some strain building up across fault systems that we really haven't seen active in quite a while. All right, we'll talk about that in a minute, though. Let's go to the volcanoes here. Mount Rainier. Currently, it's a beautiful volcano. I don't know if that's what it looks like right now. Probably not. But it is green, meaning normal. No unrest, no elevated conditions, but that could always change, right? Earthquake activity. Well, let's go ahead and zoom in here. There's some earthquake activity. Again, right at the summit area of Mount Rainier. Can't get any more closer than that. Let's check out some of these seismograph stations. I don't even know if this tilt meter is working here. Nope. Surprise, surprise. This seismograph station's not working either. What is going... No. Are you kidding me? Past 24 hours. Here you go. Not a darn thing popping up here. Here's this one right here. Let's see what we got. Let me get rid of... it'd help if these were working. That would be awesome, right? They need help. I'll go up there and help them out. I'll climb a mountain and set up a seismograph station or a webcam. It's pretty easy. Earthquake activity. That kind of looks like there's a lot of earthquake activity, but also at the same time, I don't know how windy it is up there. There's some of those seismic signatures from the... this was the Morocco earthquake. You can see the S wave. Maybe the P wave there. And also up here, I believe that's at 5.8 there in Mexico. One of these is the Mexico one. But far as earthquake activity goes, it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, I see a couple right here, these darker lines. Those could be the ones. Right here as well. This other little bitty spiky stuff, it's hard to say. It's hard to say without looking at another local nearby station that could verify maybe that same type of signature popping up. But again, there's not a whole lot to choose from. Nothing's really working up here. Here's this one past 24 hours. But this one's more down south towards the Paradise Inn. Waveform from the last 10 minutes. That's pretty cool. S waves right here. Notice that wavy line from that Morocco earthquake. I don't really see any quakes of concern. right here. Those look like maybe some of those earthquakes that they're reporting. These other little spiky ones that are on top of the this other station further up north, I think it's some type of wind. But we'll continue to check back on that. That's why I like to verify the data with stations literally within a mile or two of each other should show the same type of activity if there is indeed earthquake activity. But the environment provides different noises and sounds and wind depending on where they're at up here at the volcano. But we'll continue to watch that. Is this camera working? Oh, this is that one that's from 2022. All right. Let's move on to the Mount St. Helens area down here. Excuse me. It's been a long day, let me tell you. Let's see what's going on here at Mount St. Helens. This area was reporting less earthquake activity, so let's see what we got up here on the seismograph station. Now, there's those waves from the larger earthquake activity. Notice the distance as far as the width goes, and that one up here as well. Earthquake activity, I'm still seeing what looks like earthquake activity here. Notice these broader events, and I'm going to verify that with a another seismograph station here. Was this one working? Nope. Nope. One of these were. Let's see here. This one's kind of working. So there's the, once again, those distant earthquakes, but I can see what looks like, you know, sometimes, and there's those other marks that were a little bit larger on that other seismograph station I showed you. So this is legit activity, definitely legit activity, but it's more localized to whatever's going on right up at the crater area. This is the other station I just showed you right here. Still showing some of those marks, but not as prominent as on this map. But something's going on. There's still some noise and earthquake activity going on directly underneath this region. We'll definitely continue to watch that and report back on it. All right, let's move on here past the volcanoes. Northern California. We had a 5.0 earlier, 5.0. Earlier today, I was driving home, so I didn't get a chance to even say if I felt it or not because I was driving. Probably would have. Bernie, California sits just outside of, well, we got Redding. Chico's down here where I'm at, just outside of Chico. And it's kind of within the distance range. I think a few folks did report feeling it. Let me check here and see. Here's the rings. Yeah, barely. The lightest of the rings kind of go down here past Chico a little bit. So if you're sitting still, you might be able to feel it. Looks like a few folks reported it around Chico, Oroville, mostly around Redding, Shasta Lake, and up, of course, around Bernie, where some folks reported, looks like some strong shaking going on from that earthquake. A couple reports here, mostly, again, around Bernie, with 43 reports. Now, that earthquake up there struck on a fault system, or a it's a very old type fault system up here. There's a couple different faults that I believe it struck on. It's either the Hat Creek fault zone, which is kind of a series of fractures up here, or the Rocky Ledge fault, which is kind of somewhat one and the same. Now, they have had a bunch of aftershock activity, quite a bit, down there about 12 to 16 kilometers deep. The main one was 15 kilometers deep. Did have one here at 2.3 away from this area, 37 kilometers deep. Did that one get reviewed? That's an automatic status, so that could get removed or revised over here. So this activity occurring on the a fault system that has been fairly quiet with no earthquake activity that we can see as far as geologists and whatnot can look at. And it's possible maybe some of these fracture zones up here have been covered up by ancient volcanoes or older lava flows up here. So when that happens, it makes reviewing, potential surface traces much more difficult. But there is no historic information up here with terms of active earthquake activity. But they did do an estimate that a surface breaking rupture could produce an estimated 6.7 with a reoccurrence interval of around 667 years plus or negative 167 year in response to rapid slip rate in the range 2.2 to 3.6 mm per year, creating a moderate risk given a lack of historical earthquake events in this area. There is a wealth of scientific information that I found out here on this fault, and we're not going to go through it. But if you want to read some heavy-duty wording with regards to ancient faults out here and escarpments and all sorts of stuff that revolves around this fault zone, I'm going to include it in the update video as links. There's too much to go into, but I just wanted to point out that this area does have a potential due to the lack of activity, even though some of these areas have a very slow slip rate. There hasn't been any earthquake activity out here, so it could be building up for who knows how long. But I'll let you guys read all this. Again, 6.7 is the potential out here, so just a heads up. 6.7 out here would be kind of a shocker, right? To folks that, more concerned about volcanoes than they would be earthquake zones. But again, any of these fault systems out here, just because they're quiet now does not mean they're going to be quiet forever. We could see some around Susanville, Alturas. There's so many different ancient old fault systems that we think, may just be sleeping, right? All that has to do with a whole bunch of pressure out here across the west coast right now, I believe. So we'll keep guard on this area. And I think more so over here around Eureka with this type of activity triggering inland. Definitely watch this. We did see one over here along the Sacramento River roughly about that same time. Let me see. It's underneath an automatic status, so this has not been reviewed. Could be a false reporting from that data station when this one kicked up, which was roughly about the same time this morning. Let's see. The rest of California, Bay Area, pretty quiet. We did see some movement right smack dab on the San Andreas Fault, the southern segment, San Bernardino Mountain section, just outside of Desert Hot Springs, a 3.1. That's a little close for comfort there on the southern branch. This area is very capable. I think, it does not take a rocket scientist to see how much strain has been built up here across this plate boundary for many years, over 300 years since the last big-time rupture here along the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. We've seen other activity up north and, of course, San Francisco area, but that's not here. So that 8.1 is the expected magnitude when this thing decides to go. 3.1 earlier this afternoon, 6 kilometers deep. Looking further down, there's not a whole lot of swarming going on, but that doesn't mean that things are pretty quiet right now. Barrett is the station I watch down there for Southern California activity around this area. Is where that seismograph station is, and it does a pretty good job of picking up Southern California movement. But keep an eye on this area. Overall, general seismic activity has been elevated across the eastern Pacific and elsewhere, all over the place. Let's see, Alaska, little swarm of activity near the Trident volcano. This has been an off and on thing. I don't think we got any notifications on that. Let's go check out the hazard notification system on Trident volcano. Of course, we got some significant explosive events there at the Shishaldin volcano. Looks like they've had 9 during this eruptive period. The color code is watch in orange. That was red just a short time ago, but that was due to uncertainty on what was going on. Either way, it's still underneath that watch area. Earthquake activity here at Trident volcano. continued over the past week with volcanic tectonic earthquakes noted most days and a few deep. Low frequency earthquakes observed earlier in the week, so that could mean some magma movement being reported or heard or detected below. Ground uplift at Trident Volcano has also been detected in satellite radar imagery or data. Snow cover prohibits winter observations, which limits our ability to provide precise timing. But it looks like from June 3rd, 2023 indicates that a 2-inch, which is 5 centimeter of ground uplift has occurred since October 6th. Uplift is most significant on the volcano's south flank. So obviously it looks like we got something stirring up underneath there as well. All right, what else we got here across the area? Anything pop up since we've been chatting? Seismograph stations look calm for now. There's a little earthquake right there at Mount St. Helens again. See, I'm telling you, these are popping up and not being reported. Let's check out space weather activity. Blackout. Perfect timing again. Always hit the blackout time, but that's okay. Looks like flaring activity was around the C flare category. But watching quite a few sunspots here, folks, entering into the Earth position, as far as being directly lined up for a bullseye shot. But it's hard to say. These kind of look like they are dissipating. I'm hoping not. That seems to be the case here lately with the solar cycle 25. You get all these massive sunspots, and they behave as they enter the visible disk here of the sun, the Earth-facing side of the sun. And then as soon as they get over here, they start really kicking up, producing X flares and M flares. So hopefully that's not the case, but you never know. It's been odd lately. We'll watch this region here. It's still somewhat complex as far as the structure goes. A couple newer sunspots trying to make themselves known on the far eastern limb of the sun. We'll continue to watch those in the coming days. Right now, 99% chance for a C flare, M flare at 35% chance, X flare around 5. Beta gamma class for 3425. Well, this one, that's the one that did look fairly active here yesterday, but we'll continue to watch that. Either way, somewhat complex in that structure. No major auroras forecasted for now. All right, let's chat about a big-time hurricane in the Atlantic, shall we? Hurricane Lee. It almost looks like it's going through a recirculation stage here. If these are indeed the correct readings, maximum sustained winds here of 115 miles per hour. Looks like it has dropped slightly. It was 150. We're close to 160 if I remember right. Was it last night or maybe even this morning? So it looks like maybe something's going on, maybe redeveloping. But we are expected to return back to a major hurricane before taking a sharp turn to the north, avoiding the Bahamas and the Haiti and Dominican Republic area. Let's I want to check out the satellite imagery and see what's going on with that hurricane here. This was put out, it says today. It's really not strengthening, it's actually declining right now, right? Let's see here, current storms. Here is the latest satellite imagery. It looks like we lost the eye. It is definitely going through a recirculation stage. Notice the disorientation there of the thunderstorm convective activity around that center of circulation. But we are seeing what looks like another well-deformed eye right about there. So once that happens, it will gain strength once again and pick back up. Sometimes things just happen, and hurricanes will do that recycle. Let's see where this thing is headed. Let's go over here to the Atlantic area. North Atlantic will work. There it is right there. This is one of the latest weather models showing the projected path of Hurricane Lee. Still looks like that wants to get caught up with that low pressure right here. Notice that? If that low pressure wasn't here, well, I think we'd have a different story with maybe hitting Florida or the eastern seaboard here. But thanks to this low pressure, pulling all this moisture, it's going to pull that hurricane northward with it. It looks like it wants to suck a little bit of moisture out of here as well before heading off to the due north. You guys see that? Pretty crazy, huh? But these models have been pretty consistent over the past few days. Actually, I'd say over the past 9 days, it has shown very strong consistency with this hurricane. And one model maybe showed like a real quick, close clipping along the east coast, but looks like confidence has increased with it turning sharply to the north, along with the timing of this low pressure, maybe a cold front right here, pushing things up and out of here. And behind that, looks like maybe another hurricane forming down here, a little bit further low. We'll watch a little bit further down on the on this map here. We'll watch that. That's a ways out there, the 21st. Far as California goes, let me see if we got anything major going on out here in the Pacific. I don't like that. H is no good. H means high and dry, and that is not my kind of weather, let me tell you, folks. Okay, so this is tomorrow. Looks like some troughing going on here into the eastern Pacific. California over here. Let's put this thing into motion. Yeah. Come on, baby. Push that blue over here. There we go. We got some type of low pressure system developing off the coast here, the west coast, towards the end of the month. But again, that's a ways out. But I'm hopeful. I would rather see this than this blob of high pressure over the west coast, because these guys are going to cook. Canada and the east, it looks like you guys are going to get some hotter temperatures coming up here towards September. But either way, it looks like patterns are changing. We are gearing up, you know, for the wintertime patterns. I'm just hoping that California remains in a wet pattern. Let's see, anything else going on here, folks? 3.7. Just got another 3.7 in Japan on the Earthquake 3D app. Is it there? 3.1. Where's the 3.7 at? There it is. All right, showing up right here. So things are still stirring up in this area, folks. Aside from the movement, you know, that the USGS is showing. Obviously, there's a swarm over here, pretty good swarm. It definitely looks like something wants to really kick up here across the area. Aside from all those fours, there's a bunch of threes in there, and I'm sure some smaller quakes. So keep an eye on this area. Big time movement going on around the Pacific. Nothing going on across the Kuril Kamchatka. I find that very odd. And just very minimal activity across New Zealand. So quiet zones. Will they fill in? You know, I think the percentages are higher when we see stuff like this happening. So we'll keep an eye on the activity here globally, and of course report back on it. For the folks in Morocco, I don't think we're going to see anything larger. This is somewhat of a rare event. USGS said it as well, so I don't think that means that something bigger is coming. I think we just have to deal with some aftershock activity. Again, there has been no 6-pointers out there for, what was it, 300 or 500 kilometers within the epicenter of this area. That's definitely rare, so, you know, as far as historical data goes. So just stay safe. Hopefully the dam, like I say, I haven't really checked up on the damage out there. Haven't heard too much, but it looks like there was some strong shaking being reported for sure out there. Either way, stay safe, and we will catch you guys back out here sometime tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Have a good night.